Thank you very much. Really interesting topic. EARSC is involved in a credible project on this, and we see a lot of interest in the different events we contributed to. We will now move to the second part of this session. And this topic is really what initiated, in fact, the dynamism of the working group on the Green Deal, because it was one of the first folder, the forestry. And the work done at the Secretariat with support of members has been really, I would say, effective. The different amendments that EARSC proposed have been accepted by the commissions of the Parliament. So we are really glad of this. So now this panel will be on the EU deforestation law. It will be moderated by IRENE. IRENE, who is currently leads the Planet EU policy work and chairs EARSC working group on forest management. Prior to joining Planet, IRENE managed the raw material Copernicus program, a joint program between DG Defis and EIT raw materials. She also worked as a policy analyst at the European Commission's GRC. And in 2021, she was appointed as an Earth observation evangelist at the European Forum for Earth Observation, acting as a spoken person for the EU sector. Remember this. She holds a master's degree in economics from the London School of Economics. Irene, the floor is yours. Thank you.
So you each have a microphone. Great, thank you. And we are delighted to be here today and talk about EUDR, the EU Deforestation Regulation. As Emmanuel already shared my whole background, but my name is Irene Benito and I work at Planet in Government Affairs and have the huge honor of chairing our subgroup on forest management, and we've been focusing on EUDR over the last couple of years. So if you're not aware of what the EUDR is, the EU Deforestation Regulation, in a nutshell, this is a new proposal. Well, it was proposed by the European Commission and has been already adopted. And the regulation is focusing on reducing the deforestation and degradation caused by the consumption of 7 deforestation risk commodities. These are coffee, cocoa, palm oil, beef, wood and derived products, and soy. So these are the commodities that are covered by the regulation, and why we have discussed it so extensively within our community in EARSC is because inside of the due diligence procedure, inside of the monitoring framework that will ensure compliance of the regulation, space takes a central role. There will be a requirement to provide geolocation, specific coordinates and polygons, or the plots of land where these commodities are being produced, to make sure that no deforestation or degradation has happened since the cutoff date, which is December 2020. And companies that are reporting on these products that they want to place on the EU market will need to collect and keep evidence that no deforestation or degradation indeed has happened since the cutoff date. And Earth observation, data, and intelligence will be crucial in that, in the collection of evidence and in the proving really that compliance has indeed happened. So with that background, we started working, of course, on this topic within the working group because you will all know that the Earth observation community has decades of experience in the topic of forest management and of deforestation, so it was really a natural place for us to bring value to European policy. And now we are at the point where the regulation is about to enter into effect. So it's going to be implemented and effective from the 1st of January 2025. And so we're looking at what are the opportunities, what is the current state of the technology, of the solutions that our communities providing, but also what are the challenges for those that are going to be subject to the regulation. So that's why I'm so thrilled to have the perfect panel to discuss this topic today. Because on one hand, we have fantastic representation from the group of individuals, of companies that are going to be subject to the regulation. So we have representation from IKEA and from the Confederation of European Forest Owners. So fantastic. They can tell us more about how they see the implementation and what kind of challenges they're facing. And this is invaluable for us. I mean, as the EO community, we need this intelligence to make sure that the services and the solutions that we propose are actually tailored to the needs and to the challenges that our customers are facing. And on the other hand of the table, we have the EO community. So we have here Pierre-Alain, next to me, of course, representing Airbus, and we have SVEN joining remotely from LiveEO, which will be able to discuss in a lot more detail the current state of technology provision, like where are we as a community to serve the needs of this regulation. So, so I'm delighted to count with the four of you today. I think it's best that you all introduce yourselves because I don't want to make any mistakes in job titles or in pronunciation of surnames. So I think we can start with Tim, and then we'll go to SVEN and Manu, who are joining remotely.
All right. Hello, everyone. And thanks a lot for the invitation. It's excellent to speak, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Sorry, and maybe Tim and everyone, but very briefly, can you explain a bit how your organization is being impacted by the implementation of Eudr? But very briefly, 30 seconds.
All right. So first about myself, my name is Tim HARTL. I work as a policy advisor for CEPF for about 3 years. I have a background in European public administration, and in between worked for the European Commission shortly in DG Regio. To come to CEPF, to our organization, we represent the private European forest owners. There are an estimated 15 million of them in the EU, so a huge number, mostly owning very small plots of land, only a few hectares. And they take care of 60% of the forest area in the EU. They do this in a very sustainable manner, and Europe is therefore, and also for other reasons, also the only continent with forest growth. And despite that, the forest owners will have to implement the EUDR and with its full burdensome new requirements.
Thank you. Pierre-Alain.
So, Pierre-Alain Bosque, I am head of sales for Airbus Intelligence. So, you just for you to be aware, in Airbus we are building civilian airplanes, we are building military airplanes, we are building helicopters, we are building satellites. Myself, I don't do that at all. So my company, what we are doing is providing services coming from space, so it's clearly communication and also Earth observation services, providing data, but also solutions for EUDR.
Thank you. Manu or SVEN?
Yeah, happy to be here on the panel today. My name is PRZYWARRA. I'm one of the co-founders of LiveEO. LiveEO is a Berlin-based satellite data analytics company with now around 130 people. We raised 50 million euros in venture capital, which we've used to build Earth observation applications, which are being used by end users. So we go all the way and also build the applications. Over the last 18 months, we've built an application called TradeAware, which is I'm happy to talk about exactly the implications of the EUDR across the globe on this panel.
Thank you. Manu, do you want to go?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. And this is definitely an interesting topic to talk about. My name is MANU MATTAM. I'm part of the IKEA group, and I work in the public affairs team there. I'm the director for regulatory affairs. To give a brief introduction to those who don't know us, IKEA, we are the largest home furnishings retailer in the world, and because of that, we have quite an extensive, let's say, commodity footprint. And if you look at pretty much all the commodities that are affected by the EUDR, wood, cattle, leather, coffee, cocoa, soy, palm oil, these are all commodities that we use. In fact, our agricultural footprint covers more than 40 plus commodities, right from forest and wood all the way to potatoes and green peas and berries. And with this scope of products that we also have scale. So, for example, 1% of the global annual commercial production of wood is used by IKEA. Now, with that kind of footprint that we have, legislation like the EUDR puts quite unique challenges on it, because we need to look at it for all these 6 commodities, not just in Europe, but from where we are sourcing in different parts of the world. And that's where the challenge for us comes to meet this legislation, because data systems and data availability is not the same in different parts of the world. And we see a very specific role for Earth observation here, because we see that sustainability and traceability needs to be cost efficient. And that can only happen at scale. And we see Earth observation as being one of the mechanisms which can provide that tool. But then also, we want to also look further, what can we do with this data once we have collected it? And whether that could be used in some other way, shape, or form. For example, like, one of our big intentions is to able to track how much of carbon we are able to remove and store, both below ground in the forest that we manage, but also in our products. And whether Earth observation, which links up with this traceability systems that are required for EUDR, could actually help us in that. So yeah, interesting to listen into this panel.
Thank you, Manu. And I think he raised a very important point that, regulation is creating a huge opportunity for our sector, and EUDR can be an entry point into the digitalization of companies. So once they start seeing that actually Earth observation is valuable, you can go from tracking deforestation to tracking the carbon footprint of a company. So I think, honestly, it's just a humongous opportunity for our sector. But let's go to the real discussion. So I think it would be great to start on the side of those that are going to be affected the most by the regulation. So maybe both Tim and Manu, you can tell us a bit more about how your organization, how forest owners, how Inter-IKEA are thinking about, or how are you facing the implementation of EUDR, and what are the biggest challenges that you're facing at the moment as we ramp up to 2025? Please, Tim, you can start.
All right. Of course, we are trying to prepare the forest owners for the start of implementation of the EUDR, which is, as you rightly mentioned, by 1st of January 2025. However, unfortunately, we have major problems doing this due to several reasons. The first one is that the framework conditions are not there. The digital IT system in which forest owners would have to upload their so-called due diligence statements is not ready, it's not functional. Commission is working on it and promising to have it finalized in time, but from the last timeline that we saw, that will be at a very late stage, too late for operators to prepare properly. The other framework condition still missing is the country benchmarking, which, if it is not there by the end of this year, hinders forest owners from benefiting from the simplified due diligence rules that are listed in the legal text. But next to these issues that could be solved in a bit more time, there are also some practical issues that we still see. To name one example, we believe that especially the small-scale landowners and forest owners especially might be disproportionately affected by the EUDR's requirements. And we have seen a very striking example here calculated by the French paper industry, which is that 300,000 plots of land can lead to the production of one single book. And all of these plots of land would need to be EUDR compliant. Even for the smallest reason of incompliance of any of these plots, the whole shipment of books could not be placed on the market. And it's quite obvious that the sourcing of raw material would then be much more secure from from large landowners compared to the small ones. So, yeah, those are the key issues we face: the framework conditions that are lacking and the practical uncertainties that we still have.
Thank you, Tim. Manu, do you have also? Please, can you share your perspective?
Oh yeah, first and foremost, I would fully echo what Tim has said, totally agree with that. And building upon that, we see 2 or 3, let's say, key issues. One is, of course, there's the EU information system. How do you actually upload the data, which Tim has already talked about? But then what do you do with that data? Can you actually, there is no way we can validate that data. So, whether if we as a retailer sitting at the end of the chain, if we want to talk about where the wood that has gone into a Billy bookcase has come from, and our suppliers have already shared that data, is it possible to validate that? Let's keep that aside for a moment. Let's look at the data that we have. We need the geolocation coordinates of every plot of land where these commodities are originating from. But we just don't need the geolocation coordinates. We also need to be able to record the time period of harvest. For forest commodities, that might be easy. There is a forest today, you fell it, there is no forest from where you can harvest it, at least for the next 10 years, even for the fastest growing crops. So if you look at, let's say, last year's, let's say, Earth observation maps, you can say, okay, whether this was a forest or not. But what about, let's say, commodities like soy, where you have a harvest every 6 months, or palm oil, where you harvest on a monthly basis, or rubber, where you harvest on every 3 days? How are you able to actually track and show that the material when it has been harvested? Or for cattle, where you need to actually be able, we need to show the geolocation coordinates of where the, let's say, the cow was born, where it was raised, and then where it was slaughtered. So then the question comes of it's forest deforestation and forest degradation. And the Commission has given a definition of what forest degradation means, but then how would you actually end up tracking that realistically? And would that mean someone has to be on the ground, or or maybe to put it more simply, all of these are challenges which can be met, but they are quite resource and capital intensive. We are not making products, we are not making, for example, €1,000 smartphones where this kind of cost can be taken. We are making products which meet the requirements of the common man, which meet thin wallets as well. So all these kind of requirements would actually, meeting them the way they are envisioned currently would mean a high cost on a per product basis. And we are actually struggling with how we can work on that. Same thing for risk assessments. How do you analyze the risk of deforestation from different areas? And what would be the data sets that we should be used to figure that out? So yeah, these are some of the challenges that we are sitting with.
Thank you. That's great. And just for the benefit of the panelists and the audience, I think it's very interesting to collect a bit feedback first from the users and then move on to the solution. So that's why we'll stick with you two for one more question, and that is around EO. So it would be fantastic just for us to understand what has been your experience in the context of this regulation using Earth observation tools, and what kind of opportunities have you seen, and what kind of challenges or limits do you see of the technology for your specific needs? And yeah, Tim, if we start with you.
All right. So we see some limitations, but also some opportunities for Earth observation service providers to help the forest owners. I will start with the limitations. And here also one example. In the Eudr, you have the no deforestation requirement, including also the requirement to not cause forest degradation if you place products on the market. Forest degradation is defined as conversion between different land use types or forest types. In that case, two types are specifically relevant: naturally regenerating forest and planted forest. And the key difference between the two is that in one more than 50% and in the other less than 50% are planted or naturally regenerated. And exactly those fine granularities we don't see as possible to observe from space. You would really need to go to field to check that. And even there, it might be quite kind of difficult. But nonetheless, we see some opportunities how the Earth observation service providers can help the forest owners in fulfilling their requirements under EUDR, which is as a raw material producer, not the traceability, but the collection of geolocation data. It's fully limited to that for the forest owners. So what could be done would be to help forest owners by providing them with the tools to collect the geolocation information. These tools should be as easy as possible to use and understand. There could be easy instructions, including instructions in the language of the specific forest owner. And one last point, it might be important to keep in mind that there are so many small-scale forest owners, and they place not even once a year often on the market. And if they do, it might be just for a few €100. And if on top of those few €100 of benefit for the forest owner, on top of the tax, on top of the harvesting costs, there might be another cost for geolocation. They may just decide not to place on the market at all. So also the cost factor should be kept in mind.
Thank you. Manu, do you have something to add?
Yeah, from the way we have seen and tried to operate to comply with the EUDR, what we see is that the geolocation data would need to come from our supply chains. So from our suppliers, from our forest owners, from the people who are building these things. But then we see 2-3 roles where Earth observation can actually help us, and we are looking at different agencies who could maybe work with us. The first is, of course, how that data can be validated. So we have information of this. Let's say these are the geolocation coordinates from which our palm oil is coming from. How can we validate that data and then check whether it's deforestation-free or not? The second is how we could potentially work on creating these risk assessment profiles and risk mitigation profiles for deforestation risk, but also potentially of compliance to legislation and for whatever other threats are there that are mentioned in the EUDR. Whether we could use Earth observation tools to actually do that risk assessment mapping and also risk mitigation mapping. And then the third thing, which I mentioned in the beginning, is at some point of time, we will definitely have an idea of, okay, this is where our raw material is coming from. This is where our wood is coming from. This is where our rubber or palm oil is coming from. What can we do with that information? Is there some way where we can actually then, since we know exactly each point on the ground where the wood originates from, is it possible for us then also to measure what was the amount of carbon captured in that area and how much of it was stored in the area, in the land there, and how much of it maybe was transferred to a product, and then expand that to look for maybe other attributes like biodiversity attributes or water attributes to see whether, since we have gone to the effort of collecting this data, how can we better use this, and how can actually Earth observation give us a landscape level view of where we are sourcing from and how our interactions as a company is affecting those landscapes. So yeah, those are 2-3 areas where we see possibilities to further work on this, work with Earth observation.
Great, thank you. Is it working? Yeah. So, I mean, Manu, in a nutshell, yes, there's so much that we can do with this data, and I think we can chat about how Planet can help IKEA another day. But coming back to the discussion, now it's the turn for the geospatial service industry. So we had extensive discussions with policymakers informing on what technology was available, what kind of data was available, and how we could support with objective and transparent solutions the implementation of EUDR. Now we are 18 months later, and we're at the point of implementation. So what is the status of solutions? What can users and those that are subject to the regulation expect from market provision today? And I think, Sven, maybe you can kick us off, and then Pierre-Alain can build off that. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to do so. So first of all, it was really interesting to hear the concerns of both participants in the market. And this really aligns pretty well with what most of the buyers and suppliers of commodities are voicing out, right? So, but I think what we first need to acknowledge is that the intentions of the regulation are good and make sense large scale. It is, though, a fact that the regulation is not easy, right? And therefore, I think it's difficult to just say, okay, hey, right, satellite data and this regulation is a perfect match. No, I think it requires a lot of work to really build a solution which is very easy to be used, not only by big companies like IKEA, and which fulfills all the requirements they have, like full automation upload into the information system and whatnot, but also supports exactly what has been mentioned, the needs of the smallhold farmers, which maybe are only shipping commodities once a year, or maybe are illiterate. So what we've done is 18 months when this regulation came closer to being approved or put into written text, we sat down and we looked at, okay, good, what's the real problem here and how can we help to solve the EU deforestation regulation? And what we've built since then is a system which goes from capturing the geoparcel through legal checks all the way to uploading due diligence statements. The process which we're following here is supporting a declaration in access so that you can really monitor your entire supply chains. But maybe let me quickly walk you one by one through the different things which we're doing for a company, let's say a furniture manufacturer. First of all, our solution is an end-to-end solution, meaning that from the buyer side, from the user side, on, let's say, from a furniture manufacturer, it looks like a supply chain tool, and it integrates with your existing supply chain tools. So we would get the information of who your suppliers are, and then these suppliers would be invited into the trade-aware solution, which is our Eudr solution. They then themselves, free of charge, can invite their suppliers, which then in turn can invite their suppliers, and so on, all the way down to the people which have information about where the commodities are being sourced from, who then can either upload this information as geo information, or, as mentioned, very simply, very easily, with a lot of instructions, can draw polygons of where the assets are coming from, or the commodities are coming from. So data collection is being solved. What we then do is we do run the analytics based on satellite data. We believe that we can, with a high degree of accuracy, compare and divide between natural and planted forests as well, can provide reasonably good analytics on also deforestation risk. But the regulation not only has this aspect of has commodity being planted on land which has been deforested, there's also a legality check, right, as part of this regulation. And we are an Earth observation company, so how are we solving that? We've been partnering with one of the globe's biggest law firms to provide that legality check and provide a questionnaire for the regions, which then can be answered by the supplier and then can be supported by paralegal checks from the law firm, so that at the end, the buyer doesn't need to care about about a legality check, because ultimately what they want is due diligence statements, which we're generating at the end of our product and directly uploading into the system, into the information system. And in the future, we believe that, as already mentioned, there's way more things you can do with the data which has been collected about the parcels of the farmers, right? From biodiversity monitoring to carbon sequestration monitoring and so forth. These are all future features which we want to implement, but right now we believe we have a very good end-to-end solution which comes at no charge to the farmers and with the full required features to the buyer of commodities. So we feel well prepared to support all companies which want to tackle their compliance requirements.
Thank you, Sven. Pierre-Alain, what do you have to add?
So, first of all, as a citizen, I consider that this EUDR regulation is one of the best laws that our parliamentarians have voted. It will be good for everybody. But as you know, the road to evil is paved with good intentions. So it's clear that we could have a deadlock with this law. If some people wants to say that as the 1st of January everybody will apply for it and it will it will be nice. Here I have to say that I have a lot of doubt about that for the 1st of January 2025. So we have to be clear. If you want to change the way the people are acting, if you want to change the way industry will trade with its supply chain, you need times and you need tools. And what we do, we in Airbus, is we have some tools, and as it has been said before, EO will not solve everything, for sure. For more than 8 years now, we are developing a system, and this is what we propose to all the companies with the Eudr they come to us, which the goal is to help the traders, the big industries, in order to identify the risk they have of deforestation. So the goal is to give them lights, green, orange, red, on their supply chain. So they provide us their supply chain, and we monitor around each of the providers the risk of deforestation. And there is then a green, orange, or red light. And when there is an orange light, which is quite clear, it means that you have to discuss with your provider in order to understand what is happening. Because what could be detected as a deforestation is perhaps not your provider, it's perhaps someone else, or it's perhaps not at all a deforestation. It's perhaps cutting palm oil in order to plant new forest. So you have to be, you need to exchange, and then you need to calibrate. And the good thing of that, it is global, and we have all the EU data to provide that, and with Copernicus, but with the contributing mission of Copernicus, Planet, Airbus, and others. And so here we have tools. It exists, and for me, the main difficulties is that there could be a misunderstanding between states authorities and perhaps traders of commodities. So I have heard 2 months ago some state authority saying, well, what I want is you provide me data, and with those data I can sue the traders or the industry who are deforesting. And we told them that we don't have such, today we don't have that. And if the goal, if authorities don't understand that the goal is to change, and it takes time to change the way of acting, then we will go nowhere. And there is the other part for traders and other people who just want to say, I don't care about, I just want to know if my plot, well, if the plot, I get the palm oil 9 months ago or the wood 1 year ago, I just want to know if it is a good one or a bad one. Okay, but if it is just that the need, then we will go nowhere.
Thank you, Pierre-Alain, and actually I want to continue with you. So we now got a bit of an overview of what is the state of the art in terms of solutions and capabilities, and we also got some political reading from Pierre-Alain. And I think it would be great, just also for the benefit of our guest speakers, to talk about a couple of specificities. So when we're looking at the technical capacity, for example, I mean, you spoke about ground truth, which I think we all agree is extremely important to be able to validate the results that we can see with EO. What about other challenges that are being raised, and they're really in the media now that the topic is getting very hot as we approach the deadline? Capacity to geolocate parcels, how can data help us in this state? Looking at degradation, for example, conversion from natural forest to planted forest, harvesting times, being able to detect when a specific commodity, for example, soy or palm oil, or palm, has been harvested. How can data and the services that we are building on top of data perform against these requirements of the regulation?
So that for me is not an issue, and technically it's not an issue.
Music for our ears. Tell us more.
No, so first of all, we have all the data. So regulation is starting in 20. So the base of the regulation is the state in 2020, but we have more than 2020. We have more data, so we can make the comparison. We can make that, and you can monitor regularly with all the data which are existing. You can monitor regularly, and then you are able to answer. What we need is really tell me what you want to monitor. So tell me the geolocation of what you want to monitor. As soon as we have that, we are able to do it. There is no issue for me, no technical issue.
Fantastic. And I think, Sven, that is a great opening for you and for other companies providing services. If we start on geolocation, can you walk us a bit through how services based on EO data can help companies identify and monitor specific parcels? So like, how can we get to the specific coordinates or the polygons that are required in the due diligence statement?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, this is obviously the baseline of any kind of analytics, right? So you really need to make it as easy as possible to collect the data. We've talked to different entities, and it obviously varies quite widely between the different commodities, but in some commodities, only 20% of the supply chain are mapped. So the information is existing where the parcels are. So you really have to make it really easy for the farmers, for example, to provide this information. So what we do is we, again, integrate within the supply chain, allow people to invite people into the social network or into the network which we are generating for that supply chain, ultimately down to the person who has information about where the commodities have been grown. And then we offer two options. One option is uploading of any kind of geospatial file format, being it a KML coming from Google or a shapefile coming from Esri or QGIS, or, and this is, as we believe, the more frequent used option in the future, especially by smallhold farmers, is that people can just very easily go on a map which is provided within the system and draw the parcel where they have grown the commodities. They can provide information which they have about this parcel into the system. And all of this is kind of intuitive due to the fact that we globally have been using Google Maps now for years and years. So the general kind of like experience is that people are used to Google Maps, and our tool works very similar to that. So they are equipped to upload the information. The tool is being provided in many dozens of languages, so that's really easy. And then this information is being connected to that supply chain and can be used to run the analytics on top. So maybe that's in short how we allow people to collect this information, which is the baseline of the analytics.
Birana, I think you want to say something.
I said that there was no issue. So in fact, there is perhaps we have currently one issue we didn't solve for cattle. So because the issue with cattle is that cattle is traveling. Yeah. He is born somewhere, he's bred elsewhere, and that is for us an issue today. And I think that to find the geolocation, the different geolocation of cattle is quite complex.
Great, so some homework. And my last question, Sven, if you have like a brief answer. Pierre-Alain already commented on the potential challenges to comply by the end of the year. I've also really read, like in the newspaper, that there's huge concerns over the bureaucracy that this is going to mean for companies. If every time you're placing a batch of products in the market, you have to provide a due diligence statement, this can become overwhelming. So how can solutions that are currently available help manage that bureaucracy and make sure that it's not a madness and it's doable? Yeah,
I think like this offers a big option for a big potential for automation, and this is exactly what we're trying to provide. Is that all these due diligence statements are automatically created, automatically uploaded, integrates with the ERP system of big companies, and those can also be completely automatically being issued, or due diligence statements can be automatically being issued once a new parcel has arrived. And we believe that, yes, there is obviously some bureaucracy as part of the regulation, but this can be solved through the APIs which the European Commission has provided.
Thank you. And what would we be if not bureaucratic in Europe? At the end of the day, we need a little bit. So thank you very much. I think we can entertain a couple of questions from the audience. If we could get the Slido, if we have any. And, you know, as panelists, please jump in and just answer. Do we have any? Ah, they're there. Okay, wait. So, okay. So, so we'll go for some of the ones that have two. So that's more for the EU. Okay, so maybe let's take the one on VHR imagery, and I see Pierre-Alain already jumping to it. So the EUDR doesn't mention or request the use of very high resolution imagery as the need for due diligence. What is your key argument to integrate such costs into the service that is offered? So first, I think Pierre-Alain, and it's this second to last. And I think here VHR we can almost say is under 10 meters of Sentinel-2 in a way, so commercial imagery. Just for the purpose of cost assessment. So Sven or Pierre-Alain?
Yeah, maybe to comment here. So we believe that so satellite data with a spatial resolution of more than 10 meters can be used to provide some insights into deforestation-free status, into the deforestation-free status. Higher resolution data can help to provide better and sometimes can help to differentiate between, for example, planted and natural forest. What we've seen in our experience, though, is that very high resolution, so sub 1 meter data is not required to do so. So there is somewhere a sweet spot. A lot of the regulation can be answered with low resolution data, so to say, and with higher resolution data, you can even provide better insights on different aspects, for example, also on deforestation risk.
So I agree. We use very high resolution mainly to solve issues when we have orange or red lights. Then we go to VHR resolution, but VHR resolution is still a low part of the data we are using. We are mainly using the Copernicus data or medium resolution. But we have to be aware that we have some companies who are looking for not only EUDR, they want to go further EUDR, they want to be completely deforestation-free. And I know that there are some companies, and we had a lot of discussion with them, who said, okay, your Copernicus data, the resolution is not good. I want you to use VHR resolution. And then we enter into a service which is quite costly. So, but there is no issue with the VHR imagery. Yeah?
Go for it.
Yeah, thanks. So maybe before I go on, the forest owners have always welcomed this EUDR, the general objective of minimizing global deforestation. But as I mentioned in the beginning, we don't have a net deforestation in Europe. And therefore, some of the requirements we see as disproportionate. The EU has already put online this EU observatory with a rather low resolution. But for the purpose of traceability under EUDR, we might need a higher precision resolution. And that's where it gets costly. And that's what is concerning to the forest owners, because it might be just disproportionate. We don't have the problem, we don't cause the problem of deforestation, especially in those countries that are, that basically don't have a risk of deforestation. There are countries that don't have any claim of illegal deforestation over the past years or decades even. So why should they be obliged, the forest owners in those countries, to fulfill those very burdensome requirements and also eventually costly requirements?
Thank you. And I think, unfortunately, with this, we need to close. I have 1 minute to close the session. So thank you very much to our panelists, of course. EUDR has been, I think, an excellent example of how space and Earth observation data and services can support green policies coming from Europe. this was the basis of our motivation when we set up the Green Deal Working Group. We understood that we're facing gigantic challenges globally, and climate change is one of them. And in order to face them, we really need the measurement systems. We need to create a baseline and understanding of what is the status of affairs to then be able to generate policies, objectives, and measure progress. And I think our colleague from Vera was talking about this, and EO here can be extremely valuable. But I have one ask, which is something that actually Giuseppe brought up before, and it feels like we're always a step away from really being as close to the solutions and to the end users that we're trying to serve. We have so much data, but we still have a gap to really, really user-ready solutions. And I think that we have a huge opportunity at the moment with, guess what, AI. And I'm a bit scared that we don't seize it. So I've made it my personal crusade to really make sure that, as a space sector, we really, really ride this wave, because it's a ticking bomb. If we don't seize it, the AI wave will swish us over, and we will have missed out. And there's so much potential to use all the amount of data that we're generating that we can't even process because it's too much, to actually feed it to algorithms, to make sure that we attract AI talent into our sector, but that we also let those people that are training foundation models, that they can use Earth observation data to do incredible things. So I think that's definitely homework for us to do, and like an area that we really need to work into. We need frameworks. We need to make sure that if our data is being used to train models, that there is a protection of proprietary or commercial data that is used for correct purposes, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of work to do there. But again, we cannot miss the opportunity, because if it's not this, then I don't know what it is going to be. So it has to be now. And that is it. So more to come from the working group with the next commission. We are thrilled to see who will be the next commissioner for green policies and the Green Deal. And we will be there, of course, supporting the work that you're all doing and bringing it to the policy domain. So that is it. Thank you very much. And let's go for lunch.